Hey everybody, my name is Ian Southwell and I had posted this ring to Tomas's education site, and I had a few questions about how I had actually gone about and done this. One question in particular had come through is, how do you do this step by step all the way through? This thing took me many hours. I'm guessing somewhere around 5 to 8 to kind of complete. So don't get discouraged if you guys can't get this in one go. I would encourage you to keep doing more and more and more. I did have another question too in there, how to get some recessed areas to make sure that the places that are higher are actually getting some actual polish when this goes through. So I'm going to cover a little bit of everything in here. Hopefully this doesn't go more than about 5 minutes. So buckle up and let me walk you guys through what I did and how I actually got to this point. A little bit for you guys that are new, I do have a very customized interface. You may notice this. As a ZBrush teacher, I use a lot of different tools and they're all over the place. So let me go ahead and put this back into a workspace that you are probably most familiar with and will probably help you guys out. Otherwise, it could get very confusing. So first things first, the way I actually had started this guy is with the Ringmaster. If you guys don't have the Ringmaster, let me show you guys where this actually exists. Oh, hold on. Let me get into there. So if we go up into Z plugins, there is a Ringmaster online that you guys can pick up, and it is incredibly helpful. It'll basically just say, hey, what size ring do you want? What's the thickness and the width? The thickness being the distance from here to here, okay? And then your width is the distance from here all the way to here, okay? So you guys can think about that as where you want it to go. So to begin, we just started with a simple ring here, and I'm actually going to change my material and then turn on polyframe so you guys can see what this thing looks like initially. It's very simple, and from here I just ended up, from the beginning I ended up just using this guy right here, the Z modeler brush. I'm putting all of the edges and bevels and nice little designs that we see here on this to begin, because I wanted to make sure that I had a little border on there. Next thing I did was to actually come through and then just use my move brush and kind of push and pull these things side to side. Move brush is just your basic move brush here, nothing fancy, and I just wanted to make sure these were getting pulled out. I was also using Symmetry at the same time to maintain my X and my Z on each side, so that way I can push and pull this very easily and not have any major discrepancies, because I wanted to keep this as even and clean as possible. So you can just kind of push and pull this very easily. Next thing I did was to create a couple of cutters, because what I wanted to do on this was to actually cut a couple of holes in here. So let's go ahead and turn both of these guys on and turn the one off below so you don't have a distraction. There we go. So I used these cutters along with the live boolean technique to cut the holes in here. Okay, so from this top here, I'm actually just subtracting out of this guy right here. Let's go ahead and then just turn on live boolean right up here at the top, and you can see I get some holes cut into it very easily. And then just go ahead and run the live boolean process to get that set up. Next thing I did, let's go and turn live boolean off, was to come down here and just to Dynamesh it, because what I want to do now is just to come in here and just start sculpting. And you can see right now I'm only sitting at 274,000. If I turn on the polyframe, you can see it's actually pretty dense. It's not quite as dense as I want. For those of you guys familiar with Tomas's work, he usually starts at about 2,000 from what I've noticed. Tomas, you can always chime in here and tell me that I'm totally wrong when he starts on a ring, because there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do at that higher resolution, because I've basically got my base mesh built once I've actually got these pieces cut out. Next thing I did was to go through and make sure that I've got a couple of different polygroups, because there are areas that I'm going to want to work with that I don't want to be affected, so I can go ahead and just mask off certain areas. So if I just go ahead and grab this one and whoops, mask that and then set it. So now I can work on just these areas, and they're not going to my sculpting isn't going to be bothered on these edges here either. As far as going to sculpting, it's a lot of just kind of playing with the brushes and seeing how I want them to behave on the surface. Granted, I've got quite a bit of experience, so I know what some of these brushes are going to do and when I want them to actually do it. Specifically, you may notice these little guys right here along the edge. I do not expect these to come out in the print. Not at this fidelity anyway. There's just no way. It's so tiny. But I did create a VDM brush. If you guys haven't played with that technology, definitely check out Pixelogic's site to learn how that was actually done. Next, let's kind of talk about some of the stuff in the center here. You will notice that if let's go actually back up here to this Dynameshed one. If I start to sculpt on this, let's go ahead and get a brush here. what I'm getting is left and right symmetry on here. And Tomas had actually brought up something that's very cool. We can actually set up our symmetry so that it works in a manner that is a bypass. Okay, so that's how I ended up creating a lot of the details that you see on the front of this. Down here on this, specifically like these guys right here. That's exactly what I did to do the bypass. I actually also used that technique here on this piece because I wanted this to curve up. I wanted to work on one side and let the computer work on the other. So you can see on the other side it's like that, and this little guy right here too. So these two areas use this bypass technique. And really to get that to work, all I'm doing is making sure that my symmetry is turned on. And let's go ahead and clear the canvas, and let's go ahead and grab that original one we were just playing with here. Oops, not that one, the next one down. There we go. And you can see that with my Y turned on, my radial turned on, and then my radial count actually turned to 2, that this is what we're actually getting down here. Let's see if I can get my magnifying glass to show up. Here we go. So you can see the settings right there. Y, radial, and 2. In my case, it was Y, but radial 2 will give you that bypass technique, which is really, really nice for getting some of the things that you want. So it's not perfectly symmetrical. The other thing that was kind of brought up is, you know, how do I do some of these specific techniques? So real quick, let me go ahead and show you guys how I was doing that. Let's go back up to this Dynameshed piece. I'll work on there. One of the brushes that I use quite a bit, and Tomas uses it too, is this clay tubes brush. And just like he says, one of the things that's awesome is if I click and drag on the surface, if I come back over this, now I haven't brought my stylus up, what I'm getting is one simple layer, okay? And then I can come back and do another layer. And if I go over an edge, I start to get this overlapping on the side here. So you can see real quick, I can start to get some really nice overlap, one object over the other. I can start to really build some of this up. Of course, I'm doing this very, very quickly. I only want to take a couple of minutes to show you guys how I'm doing some of this stuff. One of the other techniques that I actually used while doing this, and let's go ahead and turn that symmetry back on, be a little bit different. Turn off radial, turn on X and Z. And one of the things that I had done, let's make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the lazy mouse information on too, because I use this quite a bit. So up here inside of lazy mouse, let's turn that on, and I'm going to go ahead and dock this. So I've got this handy. And let's go ahead and turn my lazy radius down a little bit. And I'm going to change my lazy step. Maybe if I can get it to work. There we go. And right about 0.05. So if I click and drag, I can create this. Well, let's try that again. If you get it in the first, if you get it in one go, you're amazing. Let's see if I can get a decent one here. Up and over. Oh, let's try this direction. A little bit smaller. There we go. That's not bad. Now that I've actually drawn that out, if I hold down the shift key and hit 1, it'll draw another one, depending on right where my brush is. It basically just repeats the last stroke that I had created. So I can go up. I can also come down and start to get this shape. And this is really how I ended up getting that side shape on the side of this ring here too. Next, I would actually go through and do another pass at this. If you're getting it in one, like I said, you're just doing it wrong over and over. So let's do another pass. And then I'll carve in right there. Go and smooth this on the inside. Make this a little bit larger so it sticks up. Smooth that in there. I'm going to take the trim dynamic brush and start to kind of carve in. If that doesn't work, let's go and use the clay buildup brush. Let's carve those in. Then use my trim, and let's put a nice edge on the inside of here. So that kind of pushes that in. And it's going to smooth some of this out too so it blends in. Now if I want to accentuate some of this stuff, whoa, let's turn that smooth down a little bit. There we go. Smooth that off a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the Orbs Crack brush. Whoop, and I have these as hotkeys. There we go. So I'm using my Orbs Crack brush. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around this outside edge. And there we go. That works pretty well. Smooth it back a little bit. Let's go over that again. Smooth that out. And let's go back to that clay buildup here and go ahead and build this up a little bit more. Smooth that in. Let's turn that smooth up now. There we go. And push those in. And carve these back. Carve over this again. So this is one of the reasons I didn't want to do a huge long video, is because this looks like garbage and it takes, you know, a couple of hours to get what I want actually out of it. But this is the same technique I get until, or the same technique I'm doing until I get what I actually want. And this is a very soft kind of shape. You can see that this is much harder. So using brushes to their best advantage is, to their strength is going to give you the best advantage. There was a lot of later coming back and grabbing my move brush. And if this isn't quite the curve that I'm looking for, whoops, grab my move brush. There we go. Kind of finagle these around until I get the shape that I actually want. So I don't have to just carve, but I can also use the move brush. It's there for a reason. It uses a lot of, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to talk and do this at the same time, but it's easy to come in here and kind of push this back with a trim dynamic. Come here with a clay brush. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Carve that in. There we go. And get a little bit more of this. So a little bit on those side pieces there. One last little thing that we can talk about, let's go ahead and grab that final one, is these recessed areas in here. This stuff right in here. And this is basically just left at its original level, and this stuff is carved up on top of it, and then some of this stuff is carved down inside of here. You can see these. But to get this kind of noise, there's the reason I actually do what I do on this because of 3D printing. So let's go ahead and run back to that Dynamesh piece. And what I'm going to do is just mask off an area that I do not want to be touched by this next brush that I'm going to use. So let's mask off the front and the back. Be very, very particular about how we're doing this. And let's clear the mask here. Now, of course, with polygroups, I can just mask off certain polygroups, and with the new polygroup it feature, oh my gosh, that thing is amazing. If you haven't guys played with that yet, go play with that. That is very cool. So let's talk about actually adding in some noise on this recessed area and why I use the brush that I use. So I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to get it. I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, as in Sam. And what I'm looking for is the smooth concrete brush. And it is right here. Sorry, soft concrete brush. And one of the things that I want to bring to your attention, if I just click and drag on here, this is what this looks like. It doesn't look at all what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my dots to spray. Okay. And then make my brush pretty good sized. And I'm also going to turn off X symmetry because I don't want this noise to be symmetrical. If I click and kind of drag across here, oh, it's still crazy. So let's go ahead and turn down the intensity. A lot of this is kind of playing with the brushes, all right, too much, to figure out what it is that we actually want to get across here. So the advantage of the way this brush works and the way these alphas and everything happen, I'm not getting overlapping in my geometry, which is going to give us a lot of problems if we go out and just use like a straight noise when we go to 3D print, because a lot of printers, or enough printers, have a problem with actually having geometry overlap itself. So I don't like using a noise brush, but because this alpha just goes up and down and doesn't overlap itself, then this should be just fine. So let's turn our intensity back up here a little bit. All right, cool. So there we go. So now I'm starting to get this kind of noise in here. So what I will do is I'll hold down the Alt key to invert it, and I'm going to press down. That way, for sure, this area becomes more recessed, and I can just kind of push across the surface here. Something I have noticed with this brush too is that if my geometry is facing away from me, so in this case, if this is, let's do it this way. So if I'm looking at it here, if I turn it this way and use this brush, sometimes you'll get streaking. And of course, doing a demo, it's not going to actually show it up. But if I turn it a little bit toward myself here and then press, it works a little bit better. So you got to be a little bit picky and choosy on how this one, or how you're working with this brush. I can hold down Alt to push in, and then if I let go, bring it back up. That also will help it. If I turn off lazy mouse, you'll get a couple of other effects as well. But this starts to give me that noise that's further down inside of there. So this ended up a little bit longer than I was expecting. If there's something else that you guys would like to see, this is basically just the Orbs crack brush, and then I just go over it again with the Damien standard brush. But yeah, if there's something else that you guys want to see, please let me know. These areas were done with a magnify brush and the Orbs crack brush. This is a lot of Damien standard and the trim dynamic, as well as the SK cloth brush. This is a lot of smoothing and just using the clay buildup brush after I get my shape in there to get these nice round shapes. So hopefully this was a bit of a help. I know it's a little bit long on there, but I know you guys wanted to see kind of how some of this stuff was built in here. This was a lot of fun to work on. I'm really looking forward to actually seeing this 3D printed and hopefully I can get a picture of it up as soon as it actually happens. So enjoy all the ZBrush stuff you guys are doing. Of course, if you have any more questions, comments, concerns, and confusion I can clear, please just let me know. You can find me on Facebook for sure, for sure. Thank you very much for watching this, you guys. And of course, as they say over there at Pixelogic, happy ZBrushing.